I was raised in a Christian home, but I got sick of all the rules and left the church, partied and did whatever I wanted until I lost all control. I didn't know how bad it would get.
Real life starts now.
This is Real Life Radio Show with On Lay.
I felt alone. I felt lost. I felt scared.
Real stories.
I was so desperate in living such a dark and calloused life.
Real people.
I was thinking there was no purpose for my life. There's no reason for me to be here.
Real problems.
I told my dad, if you try to take these drugs, I'm going to kill you.
One solution. God.
Hope is a person, and his name is Jesus.
And now your host, On Lay.
Hi, this is Evangelist On Lay. Welcome to the Real Life Radio Show, where we're going to talk to real people who had real problems, who found answers in a real God. Today, we'll be talking about what percentage of Christian kids leave their parents' faith and change to becoming either an atheist or a person of a different religion. According to a study done interviewing Harvard college students, apparently only 42% stayed with the same denominational Christian faith as their parents had. But out of that, 25% had become atheist, 14% felt the need to switch to a different religion, and 19% shifted to more liberal religions such as Unitarianism. Well, the numbers aren't as high as many in the world would tell you, but there's a good amount that becomes atheistic, which is 25%. What happens to them as they get older? Do they all fall apart? Well, no. But today, we'll have Whitney Harris, who grew up in a wonderful Baptist home. But as she got older, she decided to rebel from the faith and went to live outside of how she was taught and lived a life of partying and going against her parents' wishes. She one day got hooked onto heavy drug use, and she couldn't shake it. She's going to detail it out how tormenting this lifestyle was and why she decided to come back to the Christian faith. Whitney, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Whitney, it's so great to have you with us here. Now, before we get into your story, I understand that you're only 31 years old, so you're a pretty young woman, but you got set free from drugs when you were 25. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, I've been clean for a little over 5.5 years now.
Which is amazing because I know our audience doesn't know yet, but you were heavily tied to that thing. So let me ask you, why did you initially leave the Christian faith when you were younger? What was it that turned you off from the Christian faith?
Yeah, so I was raised in a really Christian home from a young age, and adolescent, the teenage years, I just felt like the Christian faith had so many rules, and those rules were enforced in my home. We couldn't drink, smoke, we couldn't cuss, we couldn't listen to certain kinds of music. We couldn't watch scary movies, and from a young age, I just felt very restricted and I wanted freedom. That's one of the reasons I really didn't want to pursue God or the church or Christianity in general.
So you were like forced to go then, is that right?
Yes, I was forced. I was definitely forced. I had no desire to go to church every Sunday, but when I lived under my parents' house, that was one of the rules. I had to go to church every Sunday.
But looking back, your parents were pretty good parents, or were they kind of bad parents? Tell us about that.
Yes, they were good parents. They're very godly people.
Oh.
They taught us good work ethic, good morals, integrity, to always be honest. And that's something my dad always prized in his life, like always be very honest to the cent. Return what you have to return.
Wow. So they're great parents, but you just got sick of it all. And maybe you thought the grass was greener on the other side, it sounds like, right?
Yes, I did.
So then I understand you really started to rebel and you started hanging out with kids with marijuana. You eventually got caught from your parents smoking marijuana. And I understand it was like at your house or something. Tell us the story.
Yeah, I was 15 years old. And at this time, I was not going to a public high school because I got expelled my sophomore year. And so I was in a continuation school. And so I had a lot of extra time at home. And my parents would go off to work and I'd be the only one in the house. And so that idle time, you start delving into things, and I was already drawn to the darkness. So I obtained some weed and I rolled up a joint and I went into my garage and I smoked it.
Your parents' garage, you mean?
Oh, yeah. My parents' garage. Oh, yeah. And then just moments later, I hear my dad's car pull into the driveway.
Oh, my gosh.
At that point, I'm so scared. And I run inside. I'm already paranoid because I'm high. And I just knew this does not stand in that household. There's no weed, no alcohol, nothing.
Yeah.
So by the time my mom got home and my siblings were there, I have a brother and two older sisters, they went into the garage and parents sat there in the garage and one by one they interviewed, starting with my brother. And then they interviewed my sisters and they just sat us down in the garage and says, "What does it smell like in here?" I was the last one. I'm the youngest. And so I said, "Well, I don't smell anything." I denied it. I lied. I didn't know what to say or do. But my parents, they knew it was me. And I got in a lot of trouble for that.
Wow. So what about the marijuana really grabbed you? Because, you're coming from a very clean Christian background, and that sounds like a very negative experience, but it did grab you. You did like the high.
Yes, I like the high. And I think at first it was just that I had such a desire to rebel and to not walk the straight and narrow. I just wanted to be on the outcast, one of the bad kids doing those things. Like I wanted that. When I'd smoke weed, I was with a group of people that we were all doing it and we were all kind of rebelling against authority. And like that was what drew me into that life. I liked that. I wanted to be like that.
It was kind of cool, right? Cool compared to being a Christian?
Oh, yes, it was cool. I mean, I'm from California and Christianity there is not cool. If you're a Christian, you're considered like a nerd. I didn't want to be in that group. I want to be a cool kid.
That makes sense. So I understand that you became like a troubled kid. And when you got older, you moved in with your uncle. You kind of got along better with him at his house. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it was really hard for me at my parents' house. I just couldn't abide by their rules. And I went to go live with my uncle. I liked it a lot better. He was in Orange County. And my junior year, I moved in with him. He let me smoke cigarettes. And at that time, I already formed a habit. I was 15 years old and I was already addicted to cigarettes. And so I felt like I had freedom. I loved that. I was like, man, I'm 15. I can smoke cigarettes. Like he would buy them for me. And that's how I smoked.
Oh, wow. So you have this like opposite, somebody helping you to go against what your parents' wishes were. So it felt pretty amazing, like, wow, freedom, right? At the moment.
Yes, it did. It felt like I'm an adult. I can do what I want to do. I don't need someone telling me what to do. That is what I wanted all growing up. And I felt like I had that freedom when I lived with my uncle.
So did you do other things? Did you start getting into parties and other drugs? Tell us about that.
Yes, definitely. I started drinking a lot and it started socially, just drinking with friends in high school at homecoming, prom.
Yeah.
But as I got a little bit older, it became more habitual and it was like every weekend I'm drinking and going out to the clubs and I started partying down in Southern California. It started getting heavier.
Did you ever during this time see other Christian kids or just, have like a time to contemplate? Did you compare your new life with your old life? Like, were you kind of like, this is way better at the moment, at the time?
Well, there were times like when I was 18 and I really started partying hard, there were times where I was in certain situations and I knew I shouldn't be there.
Oh, so you kind of had this guilt conscious kind of situation.
Yes.
You're enjoying, but not enjoying.
Absolutely. Like I knew my parents raised me in a different way and I wasn't following that. And so I did find myself in situations reminiscing on how I grew up. I was like, wow, this is a lot different. A part of me liked it, but a part of me did feel guilty, like you said.
I understand you're going to parties, started getting really drunk. Tell us what would be happening at these parties.
Yeah, so at these parties, we would just go to a house and there would be a lot of drinking. There would be a lot of drinking games, a lot of smoking bongs, smoking weed.
Wow.
That's pretty much what the night consisted of. And you'd also want to get so drunk and maybe find someone to hook up with, someone that you like that night. It was just a lot of chaos at the parties.
Coming from a Christian home, you probably were taught to value purity. So here you're doing the exact opposite then. You're just like jumping into one-night stands, or wasn't always that way, was it?
Yeah, I definitely was raised to pursue purity until you are married. At first, I had a high school boyfriend and we weren't pure. And at first, it's almost like with any other sin, you kind of feel really bad about it. And you're like, I really shouldn't be doing this. But the more and more you do it, the more numb you are to feeling bad about it. So I did start hooking up with guys, one-night stands. And that was kind of hard at first. I was like, wow, that's all it is that it's just two selfish people hooking up.
Wow. So you're kind of bitter about it, kind of like, gosh, so this is all this is really about, physical contact.
Yeah, that's what I learned. And so then I even started like portraying guys in a certain light and being like, oh, that's all they want. But a part of me became okay with it. And then I kind of became the same way where I wasn't expecting anything kind of emotional attachment, but I was just doing it for physical reasons.
Wow. So that's a contrast to the way you grew up. So I understand that although these parties were so much fun, there was a deep, dark depression that was beginning to build up inside of you. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I was deeply depressed, and it started when I was younger and it just kept growing. And so I don't ever remember laughing. This stage of my life, like I never truly laughed. Like I was always negative. Everything that I said was negative.
Wow.
And then when I started using substances, it was a fake. It was like I would start laughing or have some kind of happiness when I'm drunk, but it wasn't true happiness. It was just because I was drunk.
Wow. So I understand you're looking for love with guys, and the alcohol started very shallow sexual relationships that never amounted to anything. And I understand that there's times it left you feeling even more depressed after these relationships. Tell us about that.
Yeah, like as a woman, as a girl, you feel used.
Oh, man.
You almost start feeling like that is the only thing guys want. And so like that's the only thing that you're good for. I think at that point, you just really have a low self-esteem of yourself.
Right.
You see sex in a whole different light, and it's not what God intended it to be. It's just for selfish purposes.
Well, I understand you eventually tried methamphetamines, commonly known as meth. What happened to you when you took that drug?
When I used meth for the first time, I was at a house in Arizona and we just smoked it off foil, and I knew it was bad. I knew it was something different other than weed and alcohol. I knew I was going kind of deeper into this.
Did you know it was pretty addictive?
I didn't know it. And honestly, I didn't even ask the guy that I did it with. I didn't even ask him what it was.
Wow.
I just knew it was bad. And he told me that it would make you feel like Adderall, like an upper.
Yeah.
So I took a hit of it, and I was up for 24 hours after just taking one hit. I did not sleep.
Jeez.
I felt like I was on top of the world. Like I felt like just that you were the coolest person, you were the best person. Like you just have this euphoric feeling and idea of yourself when you smoke meth. And the few days later, I was coming down and I went back to that guy and I said, you know, what was that we smoked the other night? And he said it was meth. I was like, wow. And I felt really like bad. I was like, man, I remember the DARE classes that we took. You know?
Oh, no.
And they said like people will think there's bugs in their skin and you'll have all these sores on yourself. And I remember what they taught us in those classes, but the high was so addicting that I did not care. And I said, can we go get more?
So you went and got more and you're like, well, I'll do whatever to get this thing.
Yes, absolutely. Nothing mattered because that's how good the high was.
That's crazy. What other drugs did you get involved in? And what was it like?
Yeah, so I was involved with a lot of prescription meds and prescription pills. And later I did coke, ecstasy, acid, and lastly I did heroin. I mean, I've really pretty much done every drug.
Holy cow. So you really got into a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, even the marijuana seemed to be the gateway to all this. You know, it just seemed to give you this insatiable hunger for more.
Yes, it did. And when you do one drug, it made it that much more easy to say, well, okay, I'll do that one then. You know, oh, I've done Adderall, I've done Xanax. Okay, I'll pop a ecstasy pill. And so it makes it that much easier to keep trying more and more.
It's crazy because you were the Christian kid who wouldn't do any of this stuff. You never thought once, right? Like you just want to have a little fun, but not this much fun. Did you when you were younger? Did you think?
No, not at all. I didn't know it was going to go to this proportion. As addictive as I was, my addictive behaviors, I craved them. I loved it. Like I wanted it, you know.
Oh.
It made me happy temporarily during the high. And then you would come down and you'd feel so low and you just want to die.
Oh, geez. So sometimes in the low moments where you wanted to die, did you ever feel inside kind of like, wow, I'm not living the right life? And did you ever kind of maybe sometimes wonder about your mom and dad, the way they raised you? Did you ever want to go back at the really bad moments?
When it got really bad, I did. When it got real bad towards the end of my rock bottom, I did want to go back.
Oh.
I just felt like my head was barely above water, like I was drowning and I couldn't get out. I was like, I'm so deep into this right now, I can't get out. That's how I felt.
I understand that you eventually became homeless because of your addiction, specifically to heroin. Tell us about the experience of heroin in your life.
So I did start doing heroin, and that was pretty much the end all. Like if you start doing heroin, you're just gone. That's the rock bottom of it. At that point, I didn't care about who I was or any morals. I was selfish. All I cared about was getting high. And so I did go to heroin.
Oh.
It made me feel very numb. It definitely gave a euphoric feeling. But with heroin, opposed to like any other drug, it made you do things that you would never, ever even think about doing in your life.
Really?
Yeah.
Like what?
Well, if you wanted to get high and you couldn't get high, I started with stealing.
Oh.
I would start stealing from stores, selling products to get money to get high.
Wow.
That didn't last me too long. I kept going in and out of jail with theft tickets, and then being homeless on heroin. A lot of girls prostitute themselves.
Wow. Well, I understand the heroin addiction did get you into a horrible situation where you were prostituting yourself just to get more drugs to self-medicate. Tell us about that.
Yeah, and so that was like a new low I've never experienced. And I was homeless. I was sleeping outside in sleeping bags. I slept in hotels, cemeteries, anywhere.
Cemeteries? Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I got so desperate that I met a dealer, and I was with another girl, and she said, well, let's go to his house because he'll get us high for free.
Oh.
We went, and he did. The first time I went, he did. And then he told me to come back. And so I did. And very quickly, I realized that all the girls in his apartment, they were prostituting themselves to him.
Oh my gosh. And this guy was like really gross. Like he was older than you and just kind of...
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, very gross. And really just abusing women and where they're at. They're just in a desperate spot. And a lot of that happens when you're on heroin.
Well, how did you eventually get set free from all of this? Because this is horrible. It seems like a trap.
Yeah. It seemed to be impossible for me to get out of the situation I was in. But God started intervening in my life, and a Christian man who was my parents' friends, he kept contact with me all throughout my addiction. And he reached out to me and he said, Whitney, I'm going to get you on a Greyhound bus and you can go to this rehab in San Francisco.
Wow.
And at this point, I was prostituting, I was homeless, and I said, okay, I want to try and get clean. I'm going to get on that bus.
Wow, that must have been an amazing moment because you're stuck. I'm so destitute at this point. Is that right?
Yes, I was so desperate and so without hope. And I got on that Greyhound bus. We stopped at a McDonald's. I went into the bathroom and the bus left me.
Really? What? How? What happened?
I was using drugs in the bathroom. I had a little bit of drugs left, and I said, I'm going to get high on this before I go to rehab because I wasn't fully ready,
Oh, kind of like your last high, kind of like it's my last cheeseburger before I fast kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. And so I was getting high in the bathroom. I walked outside. The bus was gone.
So your hope was gone because like this was the money to buy the ticket and you were far away from San Francisco.
Yes, I was 3 hours away. And so I was scared. I was like, I don't even know where I'm at. And so I walked to the nearest Walmart. And in my mind, I said, I'm going to hitchhike. I want to ask somebody for a ride for them to help me to get to the bus or get to the rehab.
Wow.
I had no other option. And so I approached this man. He was an older man. And I just said, sir, can you please help me? This is my situation. I'm actually trying to get to a rehab and the bus left me. I don't even know where I'm at. He just looked down at his phone and he really contemplated this. And he said, yes, I'll help you. Let me just call my wife and let her know. And so I got into this guy's truck. He started driving me down south to San Francisco. And all this guy could talk about was Jesus.
Oh my gosh.
He was a believer, and I was like a homeless girl on drugs. I smelled awful. I looked awful. And yet this servant of God, a drug addict approaches him and says, will you give me a ride? And he said, yes.
Wow.
This man did the work of God that day and just loved me, where I was at. It was like the love of God.
Wow.
He drove me all the way down to the rehab. I got there. And so it was God intervening in little areas of my life.
Well, I actually understand that, you met someone at the rehab center before becoming Christian, and you had a child with him. I understand this was a moment that you knew you had to take care of that drug addiction because you got kind of back into it. You're kind of going back and forth. Tell us what happened and how you felt about all of this and what led you to Christ.
Mm-hmm. So I was 5 weeks into this rehab, and I had a feeling I was pregnant, that I hooked up with this guy in the rehab. So I went downtown that day. I got a pregnancy test. And I went into a Starbucks and I took this test and I walked outside. I just sat there as it was loading and it said I was pregnant.
Oh.
At that moment, I just was weeping. I was crying and I was thinking, I'm homeless. I'm a drug addict. I'm pregnant. The dad is a drug addict. I have no money. Like, I was at my rock bottom. And all I did was cry out to God. That's all I could do. I called out to him and I said, God, please help me. And he answered me that day. And he said to me, come with me and you will never have to go back to this life again.
Wow.
And I sat there and I contemplated it and I knew it was God. I knew it was him inviting me into his life, into this world with him. And I knew in my heart, I said, I'm going to follow God. I stood up and I said, I'm going to leave this world behind me. I'm going to leave everything, all the drugs, this whole lifestyle. I'm going to leave it and follow God.
Now, I understand it's been a few years since, but how did coming to know Christ change the depression you dealt with in most of your life? Did it change it?
Oh, yes. God has given me joy, things I've never experienced, joy and peace, purpose. When I was younger, I was like, oh, I want freedom to do everything. Well, that freedom to do whatever I wanted led me to being a slave to addiction.
Oh.
I was a slave to all these drugs. Every day I had to answer to them. And when I met Jesus, I became free. And I'm like, man, I am free. I don't have to do drugs anymore to have joy, to be happy, to be fulfilled. All I need is God. And I found him.
Whitney, I know that God did some amazing things for you because I understand that your son was adopted by two Christian people, amazing Christian people, and you lost a little bit of touch with your son, but as you got set free and as God started changing your life, I understand you just graduated from nursing school and your son was there to witness it, and it's just such a huge redemption. It must have been pretty euphoric. Tell us about that real quick.
Yes, it definitely was. My son was at my graduation with his beautiful parents that adopted him.
Oh.
I pursued nursing and graduated, and it was all because of God. He did the impossible. He gave me the strength to do this, and he has completely redeemed my life.
Wow. Whitney, God is so amazing. And I really just congratulate you so much on what God has done in your life. Thank you so much for being brave and sharing that for all of us to learn so much.
Yes, of course. I love to. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Wow, God is amazing. Let's talk more about this right after the short break.
Did you know that evangelist Anlay also travels around the world speaking at gospel events? Yeah. Go to www.therealliferadioshow.com to learn more about us and what we are doing to impact the world and reach the next generation. Also, you gotta check out our YouTube channel, where Anlay explores different parts of the world and God's wonders, sharing insights and reaching people in different countries. Let's explore the wonders of the world together. You don't want to miss out on this one.
Real Life Radio is a ministry of Awakening the Nations, a 501c3 nonprofit organization that depends on your donations. If you would like to find out more about us or to make a tax-deductible donation, please visit our website at www.therealliferadioshow.com. That's www.therealliferadioshow.com. Please help us to expand the reach of these shows. We couldn't do it without you. More Real Life starts now.
Welcome back to the show. We're going to go deeper into what you just heard. So what do you think about this? The biggest thing I really love about Whitney's testimony is that all these years she fought to have that choice in her life, but as she chose the wrong things, It didn't lead her to freedom, but rather to a life of slavery, where she was literally selling herself. That is the sad truth, that so many running away from God today, they don't realize that they aren't running into freedom, but always some form of bondage. It could be lust, pornography, drugs, or even living a life that is separated from understanding the true purpose to one's own life. But God is a redeemer. He redeemed Whitney's life and turned it around from a man who was willing to be used by God to bring the gospel or the good news of Jesus Christ to Whitney. How powerful to know that God was answering Whitney's parents' prayers when that man was willing to step out of his busy schedule to be willing to be used by God. And it is in the moment when Whitney had the blindness removed from her eyes, when she thought what was freedom wasn't freedom at all. The very thing she thought was oppression in her youth became her freedom. It's written in ancient scriptures in Galatians chapter 5, verses 1. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty by which Christ has made us free, and do not be entangled again with the yoke of bondage. I'm sensing someone right now is listening and saying, you know what? I want to make that choice. I want to know what Whitney knows. Lord Jesus, I'm praying for the person who's saying, I have never truly had Jesus become my Lord and Savior. Lord Jesus, we believe that you died on the cross for our sins. We receive that forgiveness. God, forgive us. We ask you, Lord God, help us to follow you. We realize that you were raised from the dead to raise our lives back into what it needs to be. We ask for this in Jesus' mighty name. I hope you're blessed by this testimony, and I know that your life was touched.
You can listen to the Real Life Radio Show on Spotify, Alexa, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Samsung, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. See you next time.